Okay, now we have our first big superstar on the trade block. And I know for a few years now that Trae Young has kind of been thrown in the names of, hey, this superstar is potentially going to be moved. But now we have confirmed with Trae Young's agent and, the Hawks team saying, yes, we're trying to move him. If you're interested, call us. Or, they're obviously making calls too. Because at one point, he is an all star point guard. He is a great playmaker. But the other end, he is a bad, defender. And you can only do so much with a small guard who I guess at this point is becoming more, quote unquote injury prone. And with Trae Young only playing 10 games this year, we kind of saw, this window kind of close for the organization and him. And what I mean by that is, a bunch of articles, a bunch of rumors just kind of circulated around Trae Young. And we kind of saw the past, 2 to 3 seasons of, this Trae Young trade rumors, but nothing really confirmed. But now that him and his agent in this organization have confirmed, yes, we're shopping Trae Young. We've talked to Trae Young and he's open to a trade from the Atlanta Hawks. So what does this mean for the Atlanta Hawks and Trae Young? I say for the Hawks, you need to have, a veteran back in this trade and maybe a young piece and a potential first round pick. It could be protected. It could be, preferably unprotected because I still believe in Trae Young of being that all-star point guard that can average, 25 and 10 in his sleep. The problem is how many teams need a undersized, bad defensive point guard on their team that yes can play make, can score the ball, and can get others involved. And again, if I was the Atlanta Hawks, I would look for a team that's willing to give up a first round pick because you gave up your 3 first round picks and a throwing player for DeJounte Murray. And on paper, yes, this looks super good because Trae Young's biggest flaw was his defensive ability, and then you bring in DeJounte Murray, who is a long, great defender that can score the ball, who just came off their all-star season, averaging 20 points, I believe around 5 rebounds and like 7 assists. And it was so great on paper. People were calling, hey, the Atlanta Hawks are a real contender. Unfortunately, injuries and, Trae Young can't really play off ball. And DeJounte Murray is a streaky shooter that still needs his ball in his hands. And yeah, that trade didn't work out. And then you trade Dyson Daniels for DeJounte Murray, and that trade is also looking pretty bad. So let's go over some teams right now that can potentially trade for Trae Young, starting with the Washington Wizards. And I have the Wizards giving up CJ McCollum, Keyshawn George, and a first round pick from the Clippers. Now, this pick's probably going to be in the 20s and maybe 20. And I think this trade's pretty fair. I mean, if you're the Atlanta Hawks, you're getting kind of a young player back. You're getting a late first where you can still find, somebody. Maybe they fall in the draft due to, the March Madness tournament kind of exposing them, or hey, maybe a potential injury, but it's not that serious. You're willing to take a risk in the late 20s, and then you still get a veteran back of CJ McCollum who can still average, 15 to 20 points a game. And he's been shown to still show up in the playoff. But again, you're kind of still stuck with that undersized, bad defender guard combo, but you're not really investing so much into CJ McCollum like you are in Trae Young if you were to extend him in the offseason. Another trade package I could see for the Washington Wizards is CJ McCollum, Corey Kispert, and Bub Carrington, along with 2 to 3 second round picks. I can see this trade happening more just because I don't think they're realistically seeing Corey Kispert in their future because, yes, he's a great, 3 point specialist, but I feel like you can always find 3 point specialists in this NBA, whether it's trades, undrafted free agents, or, just drafting the right player. Unfortunately, the Washington Wizards really don't need to compete right now. And I feel like Corey Kispert is a great player on a competitive team, whether they're trying to make the play-in tournament or, just trying to be a more championship contender. And then with Bub Carrington, he's taken a step back from last year, and maybe that's on him or maybe the organization for drafting, another guard type player of Trey Johnson out of Texas. And I think it's just funny because Alex Sor obviously didn't want to go the number one pick with the Atlanta Hawks. His idea was, hey, Trae Young is the man there. He's going to have the ball most likely more, going to be the first option. So don't draft me. I want to go to Washington at number 2. I want to be, that guy on my team. I want to score first. I want to be, that first option. That's how it went. And it's just going to be funny that they can potentially be teammates again. Just, I don't know how that chemistry will work. For Trae Young, I think he'll kind of just ignore it. He'll play his game. He's going to score when he scores. He's going to pass the ball and make the right play because that's what he does. I mean, he's led the NBA in assists for, 3-4 seasons in a row. He's averaged, 25 and 12, or even, this. Like, he's capable of having these 2020 games that we've seen from, great point guards in this league, past and present. And some teams that I would like to see Trae Young on, maybe more of a contender or even a potential contender, is, the Minnesota Timberwolves. But I just think they're going to have to give up basically their whole team and their bench. I just don't see that happening. But him and Anthony Edwards would be interesting. Another team I would say is the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't think this will work because they don't really have anything that would interest any team in the NBA. The Giannis situation kind of being up in the air. Is he staying? Is he going? I don't see them even making a noticeable big push for Giannis in the Bucks. In a team like the Raptors right now, fourth in the Eastern Conference, they have their guy. They have a noticeable good team, from last year. Is kind of running it back, but their team chemistry is better. But would you swap, Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett, and maybe, a first round pick for, Trae Young and Zachary Ricochet? That's up to debate. I mean, I feel like that's a decent swap. I mean, at the same time, you're getting worse defensively and you're giving up, potentially two key pieces of your team. And I just don't really see that happening. Maybe if they weren't top, five in their conference right now, maybe if they were like on the edge of, the playing tournament, I could see that happening. But right now, I don't really see a trade for, the Raptors and Trae Young. And a team like the Brooklyn Nets, I really don't see them making this trade because, one, you want to lose games. You want to get, a top 3 pick in this year's draft class. And, Trae Young, he's gonna score the ball. He's gonna get others involved. Team defensively is already a bad team with Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr. If you add Trae Young, it just doesn't make sense overall. And then you got some Western Conference teams. I mean, the Warriors doesn't really make sense. I mean, you already have Steph Curry, and I don't imagine Steph Curry and Trae Young really playing together. Maybe if, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and, a first round pick or two. And then you have a team like, the Phoenix Suns, who are seventh on the West right now, who are not good at trading for a superstar. Look at the Kevin Durant, the Bradley Beal. They gave up so much from that 2021, finals push. And they were 2 games away from, being NBA champions, and they gave it all for superstars. So hopefully they don't touch Trae Young, don't even pick up the phone for Trae Young, because that's not what you need right now. Their team is doing, decent, more than what people thought they were with this whole, Kevin Durant for Jalen Green trade. And if you're a team like the Portland Trail Blazers, do you kind of make this push? I mean, you're ninth in the West right now. Does, Trae Young make you a, top 5 team, top 6 team? I don't think so, because you're gonna have to give up, a lot of pieces. And are you willing to give up on this Scoot Henderson experiment? And of course, he hasn't played all season, but, when he comes back, if he comes back this season, how is he gonna work with Trae Young? Because Scoot Henderson is not an off-ball player; he's an on-ball player. He cannot really space the floor as much. He needs the ball in his hand. And of course, I think Trae Young could maybe play off the ball better, but again, that's not his game, and I don't think it's ever gonna be his game. And if you're the Trailblazers, are you willing to give up, key pieces, for this team, or Jeremy Grant, or, a Drew Holiday, and a couple young guys, and maybe a pick? I don't think so, because at the end of the day, this is not going to make you a Western Conference contender. And a team like the Grizzlies, I don't think you're going to do a swap between Ja and Trae Young. That just doesn't make sense. I mean, 2 small guards that, are bad at defense, and one has off the court problems. A team like the Clippers, I just don't think they have enough, trade assets and of course picks for a Trae Young. A team like Dallas is interesting because you could do maybe an Anthony Davis type of swap, but at the end of the day, Anthony Davis is, super injury prone. So how much talent are you really getting back at that? And yeah, just doesn't make sense. And then you got the bottom teams. I mean, you got like the Utah Jazz, who I just don't see them even remotely trading for anyone. Maybe they're getting rid of players, but taking in people, I don't think so. And obviously the Pelicans, maybe I could see this for like maybe a mentor of, a Jeremiah Fears, but at the end of the day, you're still gonna have to give up, a lot of assets. But yeah, that's all for today, guys. But thanks for listening and thanks for watching.